Okay, good morning everybody, and welcome to a very sunny northwest of England. It's we're going to, just before we go into a few introductions from Simon and myself, just a couple of little bits of housekeeping to take care of. There is a Q&A functionality within the webinar. Please feel free to ask us as many questions as you'd like through that portal. We will answer all of those questions at the end of the webinar. Our aim from this webinar is to give you a greater understanding of AMR solutions and the solutions that Geek provide. Within that, there'll be some tips and tricks of maximizing the most from your the Geek solutions. And also then to look at all the different variants of solutions that the Geek have to offer. As I mentioned before, please use the Q&A panel, and we'll come to those questions at the end of the session. So, introductions. So, James Mottershead, 20 years within the logistics industry. The last 12 years as part of the Körber group, and my role predominantly is to review operations on a daily, weekly basis to look at the best fit for AMR solutions that we have there out in the marketplace, predominantly with the guys from Geek. So, looking at the operations, reviewing which solution is the best fit, how to maximize the throughput and the efficiency capability. But a lot of the things that you'll hear today will be around the flexibility of the solutions, the scalability, and the amount of efficiency that we can gain. So just a little bit around Körber's, our DNA and our competencies. So around 2 years ago, we rebranded as part of Körber Supply Chain. So some of these logos you see on here, you may have known sort of historically, but just to talk about a little bit of our experience within the automation industry. So more sort of traditional automation from the likes of the Conserveo team previously. So those guys are more traditional full pallet movements. You have the Robotics, where we look at more layer picking solutions. So whether that's smaller sort of hydraulic solutions, all the way through to their large multi-gantry solutions from there. And the team at Abalay that have been implementing implementing auto store solutions for a long time. But our sort of partnership and relationship with Geek came from the Kesio group around in the APAC region. So these guys have been implementing Geek solutions for around about 4 years now. They've got over 18 very successful implementations from there, and that's brought us born the relationship with Geek, and as we see from there.
Hi everyone, morning. My name's Simon Houghton. I'm head of sales marketing for Geekplus in the UK. Sorry, we're a bit on either corner of the screen. We're trying to social distance as much as possible. So I've been around the industry and worked for different tech companies over the last 30 years. Really worked at sort of anything Sony to Nokia right the way through, but generally always been on the forefront of whatever's tech trend is at the time. Been at Geekplus just as of yesterday, just over 2 years now. So really pleased to be part of the company. It's probably been my fastest time possible in a new job. It's grown so quickly. I think that's just purely reflective of where the market is and how quickly things are changing. So nice to meet you everyone, and talk to you a little bit later through the event. So a little bit about Geekplus. So as a company, we're 6-7 years old now. We were one of the first companies to develop the AMR technology, further from sort of your Amazon tech, which was the sort of original ones, and we've taken that and run with it and developed a lot more solutions. Right now, we're looking at over 12,000 robots deployed globally in 20 countries with over 200 projects. We've now 1,200 employees, so it's growing very, very quickly. When I started, there was just a few of us in the UK. We're now 10 or 15, and that's now growing to the extended family with the guys at Korber and so on as well. One of our big reasons we are developing so quickly, we have a lot of R&D, so there's over 400 R&D engineers, and these include ex-rocket scientists, professors of mathematics, so they're really helping develop not only the solutions but also the software. And there's over 300 patents we hold now on different robotic solutions, so it really helps us to differentiate ourselves from our competition.
Okay, so we're going to split the presentation into a number of areas. So a bit of an introduction, as a basic introduction to AMR and what they do. So the AMR solutions that we're going to talk about today are robotics that work independently of any kind of guidance within the warehouse, and they're able to identify obstacles, move around them, plan their journey independently. So speaking with Simon's going to mention a little bit further on, the robots themselves are fantastic pieces of kit, but predominantly around in the back of that is the software that helps to run them becomes a really important part of this. But having that modular capability that can work autonomously in navigation is really important.
I think just to add to that as well, in any manual operation, typically an operator's 50% of their time is spent in transit. So that could be walking around, pushing a truck around, and the aim of AMRs is really to take that part away and allow the operators to focus on the productive tasks of picking or putting away or whatever within the system itself.
Yeah, so robotics at Körber, as I mentioned previously, has been around for some time. The industry has demanded that we have more flexible, low-cost automation that's available, and as I mentioned, that was born from the partnership that happened with the Cohesio Group and the Geek team, a number of years ago, and now it's around getting that knowledge and best practice to a global market. And with the partnership we have with Geek, that's really that's really important, and the robotics element within Körber and the global team that's pushing that is growing on a weekly basis. So we're going to push on now into sort of market trends, what we're seeing out there. Between Simon and I, we're out visiting customers, as I mentioned before, on a weekly basis. So to give you a little bit of an idea of what's happening within the market.
Okay, I mean, certainly, and especially in the last 12-18 months, obviously we've seen a very unusual time, and that's obviously changed the way we shop, changed the way we think, and that's also caused problems amongst the distribution centres which are selling the goods we buy. So I think certainly from an AMR perspective, why are AMRs becoming so much more popular? Well, firstly, it's the picking efficiency. So typically between 3 and 6 times improvement over a manual operation. The solutions themselves have a very quick payback. So certainly on the UK projects with UK salaries, we're looking at a 1 to 3 year payback on a lot of solutions. Peak management. So a lot of coming from a traditional integrator background myself, a lot of the time you could design around peak, but that would significantly increase the capital cost of any automation system for your warehouse. So one of the advantages with robotic systems is they are very quickly scalable. So in the case of peak management, you could buy around average peak, buy the solution around average peak, and then rent robots just for the few months a year when peak's in progress. So very, very flexible. From a deployment point of view, first project deployment could be going live within 12 weeks after contract sign off. So what that means is you can almost introduce multiple phases across your automation plan. So if there's a 5-10 year business plan, you don't have to install the automation system based on year 5 or year 10. You can do it over a number of years and grow, so the capital cost is controlled. Lower labour costs. Well, we know that, and we'll show later on some real case examples where just by taking away that transit piece which I talked about, which the robots are doing for the operators, you can reduce labour costs by up to 70%. There's also gains on storage space, so you can certainly increase storage space efficiency up to 30% more. And the automation robotic systems, which perhaps a lot of people didn't know, can go across multi-floor integration as well. One of the big advantages of AMR systems, perhaps versus traditional automation, which was always in the realms of large blue chip companies, very high costs, is the entry level. So you could certainly be looking at an investment of a robotic system for a few $100,000 versus traditionally it used to be maybe a few million now. Other advantages, picking accuracy as well improves, safer operations. So because traditionally the operators, we used to walk amongst the aisles and be mixing with trucks going past, obviously that caused safety issues. Now a standard robotic AMR system would be that the goods are being brought to the robot. So the robot operating areas are operator free. So that obviously improves safety for the workforce. And I think one of the last point, one of the key points is the flexibility, because certainly on a picking system, the infrastructure being employed is typically QR codes stuck on the floor, the robots and mobile racks, and that's it. They're very easily transferable, or if your operation expands, the warehouse is extended, or you move warehouse altogether, the robotic solutions can come with you.
Yeah, and I think just from again going in to see different operators and different business processes that we're looking at, one of the key things that people are really liking and really taking to is the ability to start within a smaller area and scale very quickly, to meet demand. That may be based on business growth and peak periods. It also might be working in one particular area, getting comfortable with the solution and then scaling it to other particular areas where more sort of fixed traditional automation struggles to offer that kind of option, and it's certainly what our customers and our opportunities we're working on at the moment.
So future of automation. So although certainly for the UK market, robotics still feel quite new for a lot of customers, is actually quite a mature market now, certainly in the APAC region, and these growth rates we're seeing, we're looking at 50,000 robotics warehouses by 2023. 300% growth in the number of AMRs being used. Obviously, I mentioned the entry level is a lot lower, so we're now seeing businesses not just from large-scale distribution businesses, but right the way down to small to medium enterprises from, say, e-commerce type companies as well, who are now considering it. So the potential is huge. And I would say one key point on automation. It is proven, it's not new, it's not risky. Let's say there's hundreds of sites now available which are using robotics day in, day out, 24/7. Dip the toe in the water as soon as you can. The quicker you get into using robotic systems, the quicker you get the benefits from them. So.
And the ability to standardise operations, we're going to touch upon it in a second with some of the case studies and the videos that we're showing, but bringing together the potential of having a separate e-com and a separate retail business and bringing those together and work as one operation, allows that flexibility within the solution. And we talk about all the way to, as I mentioned before, the flexibility, the scalability. The biggest tip that we can give is to use that as much to your advantage, throughout the process. It is really important. Okay, so we're going to move on to the solutions and the overall benefits, and then we'll have a look at some of the studies as we mentioned.
So this is really just a bit of a summary of what I talked about before. So key, quick payback, return on investment, at least 2 to 3, if not more, efficiency improvements. Your order accuracy, picking accuracy improves, so that again improves the customer experience, so they're not receiving items which have been wrongly picked. Very quick deployment, flexible, scalable, and reliable. So I touched a little bit before on the range of Geekplus solutions. So it's quite broad, and we'll show you later on. There's a lot of robots within our lineup now, but our core solution, one of our first solutions was the goods to person. So this is really just reducing the walking time of pickers and improving efficiencies. We've since late last year introduced tote to person or bin to person solutions. We do have what we call assisted pick robots. So this is in an existing operation where the shelvings remains the same and the robots come to the operators in particular zones or aisles. Smart sortation. So sortation, a lot of the time, we're thinking sort of parcel sortation, but actually what we're finding now is there's some very intelligent use of sortation technology, either pre-pick or post-pick. So receiving goods into the site, it needs to go to a multiple range of destinations around the warehouse, which could change dynamically. You can use sorting for that, and this could be the smaller little parcel sorting robots, or you can also employ larger robots for perhaps sorting pallets to different zones. And then post-pick, for example, so you need to route to a multiple range of different pack areas. Again, you can use your sorting technology from there. So, and that leads really into moving. I think obviously all of the robots are moving from A to B. So if you've got somebody just through a factory or a warehouse and all they're doing all day is just driving backwards and forwards, then potentially there's a robot solution to help with that. And obviously since 2016, we've been working with some major forklift truck manufacturers as well to automate, to extend your traditional automated truck and integrate that with robotic systems as well.
Yeah, and I think this is probably a key fundamental of my role within the business when I'm looking at the operations, is to not look at it in one particular area. Maybe a goods to person or a bin to person solution is where the big improvements can be seen and can be had. But then looking at the peripherals around that, if we're making such an improvement to the picking process, how does that impact into the packing area? How does that impact in moving product from that pick workstation then onto the packing process? So what we have to look at this from a Körber perspective in partnership with Geek is then looking at how we make sure that the end-to-end solution is considered throughout the process.
And that's certainly key for Geekplus as well. Working with partners like Korber is they can provide that end-to-end solution, and whenever looking at that solution, we'll always suggest to customers that they do consider the auto packing elements and everything else, because you will see dramatic efficiency improvements when you're installing an AMR solution. So you've then got to think the upstream and the downstream of the operation, that the packing end, that's also automated as well, so we don't get bottlenecks.
Yeah, and it's really critical. We have the tools around to do that, and even to simulate that kind of process, to look at that from other products from the Körber suite, so then allow us to see where potentially those bottlenecks could arise. So we're going to talk in a little bit more depth around the picking solutions from the rack solutions and the bin tote to person solutions as well.
So talking about the picking system, so where we deploy these picking systems, well, really across all sorts of verticals. So e-commerce is one of our biggest. Obviously, we're the nature of e-commerce picking, you typically piece picking, and it requires a lot of labour. So this is really where robotics is assisting that. Just general retail, 3PL, third-party logistics companies who traditionally perhaps haven't been able to deploy warehouse automation or traditional warehouse automation purely because of the cost and the nature of the solution itself. So typically standard, more mechanical automation would be based around a specific customer storage and throughput requirement. And if any of that changes, it's very complicated to adapt to the system. And of course, the large capital cost effect associated with that, and how does the 3PL recoup that cost back to the customer? So then they're talking about locking the customers down to long contract periods. Now with robotics, it's obviously very scalable and adaptable and low cost. They can buy in robotic systems for relatively low cost. link the customer to short contract periods as well, which obviously interests the customers. Obviously, it being robotics, they're using less labor, so then the overall contract price is a lot less as well. So certainly we're working with Korber, talking with a lot of 3PL customers, because there's significant advantages for them to grow as companies. Yeah. Fashion is key as well, pharmaceutical, grocery. We're working with 2 of the top 5 grocery companies in the UK already, and then we've also got automotive and manufacturing customers as well. The picking solutions we talked a little bit before, so there's the goods to person, tote to person, and order to person solutions as well.
Yeah, and as I mentioned earlier on, taking the apparel area of the market at the moment and looking at the different processes that could be in place, whether that's international shipping, whether that's e-commerce, whether that's retail, having the ability to make one solution, one size of a solution that fits all of those processes, and having one picking operation, and meaning that an operator within a workstation does the same process, irrespective of what area they're picking, is is really critical, and that's a key area that we're seeing of growth. So we're going to show you a video, an idea. We're going to allow that to run, and we'll come back to you with some the details on what you've seen within that process, and how we're able to get the types of efficiency that we're talking.
Repetition there.
Yeah.
So I touched a little bit on before on the software. As you can see that on the graphic on the left here, it's really showing the heat map. You're seeing the QR codes on the floor, which the robots are using to navigate. So they can cross under the racks as well. So for fast pickup of shelving racks. But as you can see, these are just simple mobile shelves. QR codes on the floor, and that's it for the infrastructure and the robots themselves. The robots come out of the aisles into what we call a robot highway, and as you can see on the right hand side, our dynamic software, AI software, is really scheduling software of the robots themselves. We're analyzing the inventory and the inventory locations. We can shuffle that around and really adapt and learn as the business grows from there. But our objective is to ensure the fast moving items have the shortest run and get those to the picking stations as quickly as possible. You'll see on the bottom there, they're your little pick stations and also put away stations. All those stations have the same login screen, and you can log in as a picker or perform put away tasks or inventory tasks, or just monitor the system. So today, normally we will design a system around the throughputs into the business, the goods coming into the business and then out of the business, and associate the right number of stations from there. However, if there are flexes or changes, perhaps stations designed for put away work or picking work can be switched over at any point. So you do have a little bit of flexibility there. The number of robots we supply are always based on, there's always a buffer. So we're taking into account charging time, the auto charging, the robots charge themselves automatically. And if one goes down, it's not like somebody's on sick, the rest can pick up the work, so the system doesn't go down.
Yeah, I think there's a few bits just from from our perspective, in terms of looking at this type of operation, it's then the racks and the pallets. Even in this instance, we're not just talking potentially about racks, different different ways of us storing and moving products within the grid system. But it doesn't always have to be that the product is moved based on the pick the requirement. It could be that you have seasonal products that may be stored in the colder areas that do need to be moved forward in anticipation of the pick. So the AI algorithm and the interface and the data integrity from the host WMS can be used in multiple different ways to manage where items are stored within the grid. And I think it's that's a really important point. The other thing to mention is obviously the flexibility around the rack solution you're seeing in the image on the left hand side. You can have multiple different variants depending upon the your SKU profile that you have. Usually, as a general rule of thumb, we wouldn't want to make that more than sort of 4 different variants based on the solution that we're providing, but that will depend on the size of the solution as well. But I think it's it just shows another arm of the flexibility, and it's something that in my role that I'm looking at all the time in terms of designing these solutions to allow the greatest flexibility as you and your business grows.
I think just before we change the slide as well, just talking about software, the Geek software, or the WCS, the warehouse control system, is split into 2 parts. So you've got your robot management system and the inventory management system. The integration of that system to host WMS is actually quite a relatively simple process. We're normally looked at as a black box for one storage location, and we manage everything from there. So IT integration, and some customers, maybe smaller customers, don't even have a WMS, and we can even work with CSV files and things. So it shouldn't be a restriction on implementing a robotic system.
And sometimes within that position, when we're dealing with ERP in the background that may have the more traditional WMS capabilities, adding those types of benefits within the solution is also is really important. So just to give you a little bit of some real life sort of case study stats and figures, and I've purposely chosen the figures that you're seeing on here just because, well, for 2 reasons really. It shows the scale. Simon's mentioned already that from an SME type business, this particular operation is 2 shifts, 25 operators. Previously, across 2 shifts, we've been able to reduce that to 8. This particular implementation was just under 12 weeks in terms of implementation, and the training time in terms of the ease of use of this solution was really quick. But again, one of the main reasons is to show the innovation that we brought. This was actually a chill environment where this solution was implemented, and it was the first chill environment that Geek had implemented globally. So it just shows the innovations and sort of other areas. An existing customer within Körber, and allowed us to take over a relatively small space and still get the type of improvements that you're seeing there.
Certainly, working in a chilled environment, probably there's not many operators who want to work there anyway. So
I think just to this area, and Simon will come on to it in a second, really sort of excites me, in terms of the future and what's new within Geek. The AMR market as a whole is moving at a sort of frightening pace in terms of innovation. But the areas that we're improving on the tote to man or the bin to man solutions are really interesting.
Yeah, so I mean, just taking our C series range of tote to personal tote moving robots, the range is growing all the time. So we started with just a single tote picker, and that could be picking off a shelf. It could be picking off the end of a conveyor and depositing it to another end of the warehouse. So effectively, it will pick a tote or a carton and move it from point A to point B or directly to the picker. We've since grown that system in the last few months to multiple tote picking robots, so up to 5 bins totes at a time. These robots will work in very narrow aisles, 1 meter aisles. They'll pick totes in a double deep way. And obviously the benefits gained versus your traditional manual operation, you will see that 3 to 6 times improvement on pick efficiency, accuracy, and everything else. One of the more exciting areas, and traditionally your AMRs up until now have obviously worked on sort of like a ground floor or a single floor operation, is really where this can grow. So your multi-tote system will pick up to sort of 5 meters in height, 10 totes high. But then you can grow from there as well. So you'll see on the picture on the left, it's multiple shelves over a mezzanine structure. However, we can also look at rack-supported mezzanines as an alternative as well. And obviously, the cost difference is significantly less. So, and we're working on a project right now where we've got a three-level system, and I think in a relatively small space area, we're looking at 42,000 totes, and by far, it's in some cases depending on the system, between 30 to 40 up to 60 to 70% less in investment cost versus the other traditional automation systems, which can store a similar amount. Comparing with traditional automation as well, so certainly this sort of system perhaps would have used in the past mini loads or shuttle systems. The amount of maintenance required on those systems, normally it requires resident engineers on site. You don't need that for robots as well. So the robots themselves would typically have 20 to 25 parts which are replaced periodically. You've got full 24/7 support. So typically the support on a robotic system is more system-based, software-based, and you've got that support from there. So as long as periodic maintenance, say typically every 6 months, is performed, the system will work 24/7 with a lot less investment on maintenance.
Absolutely, and not having that single point of failure, is a key element of this. And I think probably the takeaway point for me from this is it doesn't really matter, the environment that your operation works in, whether that is a more traditional mez structure or whether we look, the image on the right to me screams out flexibility in terms of where it is. The five robot solution there, working up to 5 meters. As the business grows after year, maybe in year 3, year 4, or maybe up to year 10 in terms of growth plans, adding additional racking to the end of this, maybe adding additional workstations depending on the throughput allows the system to be that flexible solution. Simon mentioned mini load solutions where traditionally one tote is being brought out on by one particular crane at a time. We can have multiple robots working in these aisles collecting 5 totes at a time. So yeah, the flexibility, the scalability, as I've said all the way through, I make no apologies for repeating that, is absolutely there within this image.
And the soft, just talking on the software before, the graphics we showed you before on that sort of heat map, this is applied in a 3D ratio as well, so we go up as well as across, so we're looking at those locations. So perhaps if you've got your picking stations on the ground floor, then we'll look to always locate the faster moving item on the ground floor nearest the stations, and we will continue to analyze that as well.
So just to give you a visual on that, we'll move on to a video showing that in action now.
So I hope you enjoyed that video. So I think this slide really just touch on what I mentioned before, was just the range and lineup of robotic solutions we have at Geek, and Korber guys can help us integrate those solutions. As you can see, there's all shapes and sizes from all sorts of different solutions. I think one thing I'd like to highlight is in bottom right there. So this is a coming soon robot. It's a four-way shuttle. So this is effectively a robot which will be quite a game changer in your traditional pallet or stillage ASRS systems, which maybe in the past have used cranes or shuttle systems, and from a cost perspective will come in significantly less. You may, if any of you guys are linked on LinkedIn, you may have seen a little video we've on the first project. We've used this technology with Siemens, so a major brand have used this amongst all of our other technology on that Siemens site, picking robots, tote picking robots, shelf to person, and watch this space. This is due to land in the UK, this pallet ASRS system robot four-way shuttle towards the end of this year. So if you are in the market for this type of system, hang fire, give us a shout. We can probably give you a little bit more information over the next few weeks, but certainly on its way.
Yeah, I think it's just another example of the fast-moving pace of this, and it's really good to see the innovation and the R&D that's been put into the product from Geek as well. So we're going to move on to another case study, a rack, a goods to man solution based on the PA100 robots. So we're just going to move straight into the video, and we'll talk through the findings.
So Bolloré Logistics is part of the Bolloré Group. We are part of the top 500 companies worldwide, and one of the top 10 companies in the 3PL industry.
Bolloré approached Körber to evaluate the autonomous mobile robot solution. We worked through the numbers and put together a return on investment to show that it was a positive outcome for Bolloré and their customer.
They were after very advanced solutions to deliver high performance and very short lead times to their customer.
So the customer was seeing strong growth in the past and was anticipating to have a solution for fulfilling 8,000 order lines in and out per day.
Körber worked very closely with Bolloré to ensure that we got the best possible outcome for their end user. We did this by working through the data, having a look at their future and current requirements, and designing a solution around that. The AMR solution at Bolloré essentially allowed for a faster pick rate, which especially during the middle of COVID allowed us to pivot more so to a direct-to-consumer model instead of a mixed to-consumer and to-boutique model. The individual each picks per hour increased throughout this period, and the AMR solution was able to facilitate and handle that increase in activity.
So when the project went live, we had a learning curve period for a few weeks, but both the operators and the support team took the appropriation of the tool rapidly, and after a few weeks only, we were able to deliver the expected level of performance, or even to go above that level.
The implementation process was relatively straightforward. So once we'd received the green light to go ahead from Bolloré, we started the development process in terms of the interface between the WMS and the AMR picking system. Once the goods arrived, we put down the QR codes, we inducted the robots, and we built the rack units. The process took about 3 months from the initial green light from Bolloré to the complete delivery of the project.
After the successful implementation of AMR and a very positive ongoing support, we are moving towards an expansion on our current AMR in the short term. In the long term, we are hoping to benefit from the Korber portfolio of other solutions that they offer to support our innovative approach in serving our clients.
I think there's a couple of key key points to take from that video, and the reason I really like that video, is it shows a solution working in an existing warehouse. This isn't a purpose-built, shiny, brand new facility that's been designed purposely for automation or for AMR. It's working in an existing environment. It shows the storage density that we can get within the rack solutions that are there. So it allows us to maximize efficiency and storage density within that restricted space, which is one of the key challenges from Bellora when we were looking at this solution, and having that end-to-end data integration, as we already mentioned, using the Geek software, the black box solution, to then manage all of the data within that process and manage that to create that accurate order fulfillment was really important. The multiple SKUs, really, I mentioned it previously about designing different racks. There were some really good examples of different storage bins within the racks, depending on the SKU profile. And that's one of the key points. That myself and Simon and the Geek team will spend an awful lot of time at the very beginning, understanding your business, understanding your SKU profile, to make sure that we can maximise that storage density whilst getting the right kind of balance between the products that are in the rack and how much your replenishment happens, to go into that at that point.
I think only point to add to that as well, just on general flexibility, is and perhaps we haven't shown it today, but is the potential to merge different systems as well. So looking at shelf-to-person systems, that could be, you can mix pallets in there as well. So if you are storing, say, larger items, which maybe won't go on a shelf, or there's not that many items per because of the size, so you can merge in some pallet direct-to-person picking. You can even have hybrid systems of a tote-to-person system and shelf-to-person system in one. So if you've got mixed items in totes and shelves and pallets, you can have all three being delivered to the same station. So there's a lot of flexibility with the system.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the key considerations. Some of the solutions we're designing at the moment, and we're going through that phase. It's a huge consideration to look at to make that balance between storage density, as Simon quite rightly says, and the flexibility of the solution. So having the ability to pick from pallets, the chill environment I mentioned before that we saw some of the stats from, they're picking to a route, so they're picking onto pallets. It doesn't always have to be picking into a box or a tote to then go to a packing station. So again, it shows the breadth of flexibility within the solution that we have. So we're going to move on to the Q&A section now. We're on about 45 minutes in, so if you do have any questions that you'd like to ask Simon or myself, please get them in. We have a couple in there that we'll run to now, but please feel free to add them on. If we do get to a point where we have too many questions and we're running out of time, then we have your details. We will answer your question, and we'll come back to it. We'll come back to you directly. Simon, probably first one's for you. Do you produce your own robots from Geek?
Yes, we do. We have our own factory. It's actually a robotic factory, so we use robot arms to make the robots as well. Perhaps the items we don't make ourselves, obviously the racking, we work with a racking company which design robot-ready racks. But we also have a number of tech eco partnerships. So we work with most of the major WMS companies. We work with Microsoft, sort of a cloud-based system. So your software doesn't have to be on site; it can be in the cloud. Intel is another partner, so we have Intel chips inside the robots. And I think that's another key differentiator for Geek as well. That we are working with global tech companies as well, where the components we use are highest grade. The batteries we're using are the highest grade. I think our batteries are currently coming from the same factory as Tesla. So whenever you are looking at an AMR solution, it's not all AMRs are the same, and I think that's certainly something to bear in mind going forward.
I think we probably answered this around AMR being new technology, and what's the risk? I think
yeah, I mean, well, it's actually not new technology. It's reasonably mature. You're looking 5-6 years old. I think you've seen from the case studies that you've got major global companies who adopted this technology a few years ago. Certainly Geekplus has customers who started 3-4 years ago, and now they've got robotic systems across 16 to 20 sites. That's just one customer. So yes, it did start more in Asia, but I mean, you're looking at, I think it's we're a little bit behind in the UK. I mean, if you look at Australia, we're looking at 20 plus sites already. We're getting towards 4 or 5 sites already in the UK, big sites right now. But I think the number of projects we're looking on currently, that will very quickly accelerate, and we should pass the Australia. Yeah, we're talking sporting comparisons. Hopefully, we will overtake them at some point. But,
absolutely, I think so. A question here is around the algorithms work. So when a new picking station is opened, are the algorithms reworked? How can it make the new sequence of orders? And I think probably it comes down to the design of the solution in the first place. And yes, we have the ability to add and change workstations, maybe between times of day, whether replenishment is happening during the pick, will depend on the amount of storage capacity that we have. The algorithms are flexible, in terms of my experience of working with them, but it would also then depend on how many locations and how many products, and we have to consider things like FIFO in terms of product in, product out. So yes, the simple answer to your question is the algorithms are flexible in that way, but that is always put into the design of the solution up front, and to make sure that they take into consideration the number of workstations.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think as stations are switched on, and that, when we say switched on, so that the operator logs in as a picker. If there are flags coming from the WMS systems to say actually there's certain priority of orders to pick first, then automatically the system will adjust dynamically instantly on that one.
What is SLAM navigation?
So SLAM's navigation, so the traditional navigation for the picking systems usually uses QR codes. So SLAM navigation is typically where your robots working and moving amongst operators. So it's designed to continually scan its environment, report back, looking for fixed routes. Normally, we don't use it on the goods to person picking systems, just purely because of the speed. Typically, it's much faster, much more reliable. And if it's scanning and constantly stopping every 5 minutes, it's going to slow the operation down. So when a robot is crossing maybe a QR code area to an open area where operators are working in, and Geek does have the technology to actually have both systems within the same robot if necessary, then you would deploy SLAM technology.
Yeah, I think it's a key point. The goods to man solutions that we've been showing today, working on the QR code navigation on the floor, allows that that faster moving of products.
Just looking at another question here: will AMRs replace my workforce? There's two ways of looking at this, really. I mean, yes, potentially, if you like for like put in a robotic system versus a manual system, then you could have potentially a 60-70% reduction on workforce to perform the same amount of tasks. However, you could also keep the existing workforce and do 3 to 6 times more orders, which is perhaps another way of looking at it.
To do that, I think we're just talking, going back to the robot itself, and in terms of what is the normal lifetime for an AMR?
So because the number of parts in an AMR is small, you've got batteries, you've got sensors, you've got drives, wheels. If those wheels are replaced every year, batteries would typically be every 3.5 to 4 years, depending on the use. Then it could go on and on, really. It could be indefinite. I mean, if you want to put a lifetime on any equipment, from a financial perspective, you put a 10-year life on, but 10 to 15 years at least. But that could be a lot longer if the robot's maintained regularly. Then it's pretty much indefinite.
Yeah, and as part of the Körber offering, we have that maintenance plan that we can that we can make part of that with a team of mobile engineers that are out there maintaining and servicing these machines as well.
Just looking at the any experiences in Korber with Geek AMRs for material handling manufacturing environment. So I could certainly talk from a Geek perspective. We work with Siemens is one, Bosch, washing machine factories. We've worked in a number of environments in the manufacturing environment. So again, if you've got that material handling across the site, across the factory, and that's currently manual, then potentially robots can help with that.
And you know, it's an area that I've been lucky enough to spend quite a lot of time in over the last sort of 3 to 4 years, and it's probably an area where investment into this type of solution has sort of maybe been lacking, recently. I'm working on a project at the moment within a manufacturing environment for exactly that, and it's taking into account the potential of 2 to 3 different AMR solutions and linking those together. And as I mentioned right at the very beginning of the webinar, is then using the other areas of the Körber product portfolio to use the simulation processes to then make sure that the integration between them is seamless, and we don't have any sort of unforeseen bottlenecks within that.
Another question in, don't mezzanines dwarf the investment costs of robots? Yeah, potentially a mezzanine can be quite significant on cost. However, as I mentioned, which we mentioned before, we've actually been working a lot with racking companies and mezzanine companies to actually significantly reduce those costs. So then that could be in the form of rack supported mezz or a mixture of both. So you know, if you do have particular needs for mezzanines in certain areas or where there's very high traffic, then you could reinforce that with a smaller mezzanine structure, but where your storage area is, you can put on a rack supported mezz. So not necessarily, I would say, in that to that question.
Yeah, and it depends. We're looking at solutions where mezzanines potentially were already in place, you know, to utilize that, the infrastructure it's there. It doesn't always necessarily have to be that it depends on the storage density that's needed, and in certain areas we'll look at the ability to go up rather than out as well. It depends on the solution.
Do we have reference sites in Europe? Yes, we've got a few. Nothing we can say right now, but there's a few projects which will be going live later on this year.
Okay.
Multi-floor.
So the name I recognise there from Philippa, she was talking about the pallet handling. Is that already available? Absolutely, Philippa. The pallet movements are already there. We can talk to you about those at the moment. The four-way shuttle was just to give you an insight of what's coming, within the future. That's absolutely something that we can pick up.
We do have ground level pallets moving AMRs already in the lineup. At the moment, they're just for open pallets, so typically Euro pallets and things. But we do have those as well amongst the lineup.
What's the big difference using the AMRs goods to person and the bins to persons using a robot shuttle? How can we point the solution application? So it will all depend on the process, and we have to understand the solution. So the rack solutions, when we're putting away products to there, allows you to have potentially, depending on the size of the product and the SKU profile, upwards of 40 or 50 positions being presented to you at one time. Whereas, if you're using a tote solution, you're decanting into a tote that can take a little bit longer and presenting one tote at a time. So it's part of the design process that we'll look at based on your SKU profile, based on the throughput that we have, based on the space constraints that we have to put the solution in. These are all factors that we'll sort of consider to then looking at where maybe a rack solution opposed to a tote or a bin solution.
And performance-wise, very similar. Yeah, actually. So you're still looking at 2 to 3 times improvement over manual. Again, it's just really down to that SKU profile in the business as to what the right solution is.
And the order profile as well, to make sure that we can have that that hit rate that allows us to get to that 2 and 3 level. Just bear with. Do you use any clustering logic in a pick to man solutions to optimize what is picked together? So again, yeah, the short answer is yes, and it will depend, as I've just pretty much the answer I've just given. So within the rack solution, yes, we will look at that based on the put away optimization, that we use the AI logic that we've already spoken about to find those sort of family groups, if you like, of products that are picked together at the same time, so that when a rack is presented, we want to get the hit rate, as I've just said. We want to make sure that an operator then is picking from multiple different areas in that rack as it possibly can. And there's multiple probably different ways of that can be managed as well, maybe through the AI logic that sits in that. That might be a trigger from the host system that put a flag on the order that comes across that says that should be located as close to product B as it possibly can. There's multiple different ways that you can manage that.
And I think even post, so we're obviously gathering a lot of that data and working with our customers to optimize that at the start. But even after post go live, we work sort of on early life of optimizing the solution as well. So that there may be areas which flagged up, which perhaps could be adjusted, and will help the customer achieve that as well.
Yeah, so I think there's from a Körber perspective, we have offices in within the Nordics as well. Perhaps Patrick, from your particular question, we can catch up with you from that.
Within the fashion, all deployments dealing with flat items could be. So yes, no, we with our fashion customers, we can work with flat boxed items or goods on hanger. So we do have the shelf to person systems, which do have adaptations of goods on hanger. So if you think of the base where the pallet or the shelf sits on, from that point up to 2.5 meters of height and 1.22 by 1.22 as a square, you could have hanging goods, and that could be 2 levels of sort of shirts, blouses, sort of length or full length dresses, and the rack designs, and you can mix both goods on hanger and flat goods all in the same system.
We've looked at with Simon and his team recently with a solution based on hanging goods, and it becomes extremely interesting, and the areas again to consider based on the size of product, etc. But using the solution based on hanging garments, well, again, it comes down to what we said all the way through. Understanding your order profile, understanding your SKU profile, and the storage density that we need to achieve that will all come into effect based on the calculations that we've got from there. I think if we've just got time for
quick one
more.
Yearly maintenance costs of robots depends on the site and the number of robots, but
and the robot type.
Yeah, and the robot type. But I would say versus traditional mechanical automation, significantly less. As I say, we do obviously recommend that you do get support packages, but those support packages are 24/7 if necessary. So a lot of that's more system software based rather than or network based rather than mechanical support. But significantly less based on that.
Yeah, I think we'll just take one more because I think it's quite a key point. Do you have clear requirements for the floor on which the robots can run? So I think the simple answer to this then is it needs to be a smooth floor. It needs to be. There are certain requirements over incline, declines, and gap, and it's part of the process again to assess the floor quality that we're dealing with. In some cases, from a mezzanine perspective, we may look at some kind of screed to be put on that, again depending on the floor type, but that's utilizing the existing infrastructure that's already in place. So there is a number of different points to consider. The robot needs to be stable, particularly on the goods demand when it's bringing racks.
So certainly running on a ground floor operation. So we're looking at things like for expansion gaps over 10 millimeters, obviously protruding bolts from old racking, all these sort of things would need to be removed. But generally, it's not perfect floor, but as you mentioned, it's a smooth that is required. And then on to mezzanine, really the big one really is the loading factor, making sure you've got dynamic point load and dynamic load moving across there, as long as that supports the weight. And but again, we've worked together on working with a number of mezz companies, and there's a number of intelligent solutions around that as well.
So at that point, we'd really like to thank you, everybody for joining us today. We appreciate your time. Any questions that come in from now, I know Ollie and the team will be monitoring those, and we'll get back to you with answers with those as soon as we can. But thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Simon, for your time to come across with us. Anybody has any kind of queries or any further questions, then get in contact.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.